All right. Good evening, everyone. Good morning for those of you who are on the other side of the world. And thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Halil Karib. I am the Regional Director of the Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa. And this press update is meant to shed light on the current catastrophic human rights and humanitarian situation that's currently happening in Sudan, particularly in Gezira states. As we all of us must have heard or has been part of, informing, about the situations. There is a new cycles of atrocities that has been taking place in the region following the defections of some of the RSF commanders from Al-Gezira states. Particularly, the lead commander was Abu Bakar, who himself and other commanders affiliated to him from Gezira has joined SAF. This current nightmare that we have been living through, and we are still living through, it has been happening since October 21st, when the RSF has launched a new campaign of atrocities where women and girls and civilians are the center of the atrocities and the center of violence. And what is really remarkable and about this new cycle of violence are a number of issues. The first issue is the fact that the RSF is already occupying Al-Gezira. So they already are in control of Al-Gezira villages. Yet, following the defections of the commander and his soldiers, based on the informations we have received, the RSF has mobilized soldiers from Greater Khartoum. The information we have received, also soldiers from Sharganil areas, which is Eastern Nile area in Khartoum and other parts, to join these atrocity campaigns against civilian populations that they have been occupying their territory for, I think, almost 1 year since, when the RSF, invaded and took control of Al-Gezira. That was in December 19 to 23. So this is not new territories. So the RSF is not entering a new area. It's actually, exercising severe violations and executions in an area that they are already under their control. The second significance of these cycles of atrocities is the use of advanced weapons and what we have witnessed on open source and the testimonies of citizens from Al-Gezira, that there is actually a use of sophisticated weapons and arms and firing at civilians inside their homes, knowingly that those civilians, they don't have access to arms. And this is why we believe the number of casualties is really high, including children and elders. And as many civilians. I don't think there is, until now, we were able to keep track of the number of people who were killed, but we know families in certain villages, like SIHA, for example, Azraq, the villages around in rural Al-Junayd, they have been wiped completely and Tambul rural areas. They have been wiped completely from the face of earth. The last feature characteristic of these violations and atrocities is that sexual violence seems to be at the center of it, and the fact that the RSF are moving door to door, and the information that we have received from communities that violating women and girls are central. Acts of abductions are central in this process. The violence started initially in eastern Al-Gezira, but it extended across the Nile to western Gezira. And at the moment, there are reports about 100 village, literally, who has been subjected to the attacks. It speaks about two things in my view. First of all, that the number of forces that was mobilized is very big. Secondly, it also speaks to the fact that, those are civilians, so one vehicle, one pickup full of 10 RSF soldiers or 5 RSF soldiers could actually terrorize and cause a lot of death. And I am a witness to such situation when I was working in Darfur. When I was, I remember I was caught up in the fire in Greda, and we were terrorized for a whole day by 3 Janjaweed soldiers because none of the town people had access to guns or weapons. And I remember 25 people, they were killed between 11 a.m. in the morning and 4 p.m. So I can imagine, that 4 or 5 RSF, militiamen who are armed could terrorize a village of 300 or 500 people. While I'm speaking right now, there are thousands of people who were held hostages in Al-Hilaliya town in Gezira State. There are significant, there are reports about violence, and there are reports about, killing of civilians, including, the doctors within the hospitals. In terms of reports of abductions, we don't have concrete numbers until now, but we have confirmed reports that nurses at Rafah Hospital, they have been abducted. Of course, they have been, very, very sadly, reports of women and girls committing suicides. And there have been reports of women and girls speaking that, if they felt that the RSF is approaching their village, they are going to commit suicides. We're still confirming the numbers of women and girls who committed suicide. So far, we have committed about 6 cases. Only yesterday, we had a very, very sad, heartbreaking situation where 2 sisters, they killed themselves after being gang raped inside their homes. And I cannot mention the locations because the family are still inside Al-Gezira. I mean, this new wave of terror that is happening to us as Sudanese, we are, still really struggling to access, means to support local communities, to access means to relocate women and girls and to access means to be part of any form of civilian protections. I mean, despite everything, I'm really grateful for the local communities, their collaborations through big trucks, courageous men from the community. We managed to coordinate and support local activists and local communities to relocate 200 women and their families. But that's nothing, to Eastern Sudan, Northern Sudan, compared to the size of the crisis. So moving to the practical aspect of this conference, I'm going just to lay a few ground rules. Please do introduce yourself in the chat. Please share with us your name, your affiliation, and it will be great if you shared with us your email or any contact information if you would like to be part of our network and email list in relations to Sudan and what's happening. Please feel free to use the chat to share your comments in both languages, Arabic or English.
دردشة ويمكنكم أن تكتبوا تعليقاتكم باللغتين العربية أو الإنجليزية.
So I think I shouldn't be hearing the interpreter. So let me see, maybe I'm in the Arabic channel. Okay, so I'm going to move to the English channel. All right, so you can share your, as I said, your comments in any language. And if you want to direct your question to specific participants, any of the speakers, just share it straight or direct to the speakers. Otherwise, you can share it to all of us. If the time was not sufficient and we were not able to respond to all your questions, please email us and look at the chat. You will see our emails right now. The meeting is conducted in both English and Arabic. Select your preferred channel. Click on the interpretation icon, which looks like a globe at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and select English or Arabic. And, if you wish to hear only the translated language, you can choose to mute the original audio. Thank you very much. I am going to introduce our first speaker, my colleague, Adla Abu Bakar. She is SIHA Response and Protection Coordinator. She is, the person who has been navigating, these realities and supporting, survivors and communities throughout this crisis. Adla is going to speak in Arabic. Adla, please go ahead.
مساء الخير عليكم. كده سامعيني؟ هلو. مساء الخير عليكم وصباح الخير على الناس اللي قاعدين. شكرا أستاذ هالة وشكرا الناس المتحدثين على الفرصة. حقيقة أنا حتكلم حأبدأ بالأنماط. ونحن يمكن قبل كده قبل كم شهر 3 شهور تكلمنا عن عملنا مؤتمر صحفي عن تقرير لولاية الجزيرة، وقلنا كلام كثير، وكنا نحن برضو بنحذر من الكارثة اللي بتحصل، وسمينا التقرير الانتهاكات أو الفظايع المنسية في ولاية الجزيرة. كان تقريبا وقاعد في الويب سايت، الناس ممكن ترجع له. وتكلمنا فيه عن أنماط حقيقية حصلت، إنه كيف العنف الجنسي بيحصل والأنماط اللي بتحصل فيها أو الوضع اللي بيحصل فيه. آه آه زي ما شفتوا إنه النمط الأول
what's
دائما
happening.
نحن
As you
بنفكر
have
فيه إنه
seen,
العنف الجنسي
the
والانتهاكات
first
الجنسية
pattern
بتحصل إنه
for
لما
sexual
دخول قوات
violations
الدعم السريع
is that
بالذات
when
وانتهت
upon the entry of the
عشرين واحد
RSF
وعشرين واثنين وعشرين
invasion of
شرق
on
الجزيرة
2021st and
والمدن
22nd,
الثانية إنه
when
بيحصل قتل المدنيين
they
بصورة كبيرة شديد وده حصل
invaded Medina and
تقريبا
other
إنه التقارير طلعت في
cities,
منطقة
they killed
السريحة إنه أكثر من
innumerable
200
number.
شخص
And
مدني
this happened again in
قتلوا له
Sriha. More
ده
than
بالنسبة
200
لنا
civilians
مؤشر إنه
were
دايما بيكون
murdered, and this
يعني
was,
إنه
we took this as an indicator
بيتم وده لما يحصل يكون في إنه الوضع أو المجتمعات بتكون في حالة صدمة
when and
ودايما بيكون في الساعات
this
الأولى إنه
when it
بيقتل عدد
happens,
كبير
the
من المدنيين
communities
وحصل في شرق الجزيرة
they plan to
وفي
get the
الكان
communities
في
in a
منطقة
trauma
كتر
state, and this
والسريحة
happens at the
بالأخص
early hours,
والتقارير
and this
بتقول
happened
إنه
in
الانتهاكات
Kamlin,
والفظايع
Sriha,
شملها 6
Azraq,
مدن
and
plight الجزيرة
Sriha.
وتقريبا مدن صغيرة
The
وأكثر من
violations, according to
50
reports,
قرية
includes about 3
تم فيها
small
عدد
cities and more
عدد
than
كبير
50
من
small
المدنيين
villages.
لما يحصل
Many
النمط ده وقتل
civilians
عدد
were
كبير من
killed. When this
المدنيين
pattern
كده
take
الدعم
place,
السريع فرض سيطرته على
this
المناطق
allows
دي
the RSF
ودايما هسه
to
بعدها
prevail
بيحصل
and to
فيها
ensure
العنف
its
الجنسي وانا
dominance over
حنتكلم
these areas, and
عن
this is usually followed
الانماط
by
او
sexual
المؤشرات
violence.
اللي
I'm going
بتحصل
to
فيها العنف
focus
الجنسي
on the
بالذات
indicators
اللي
of
حصل في
sexual
شرق
violence,
الجزيرة
especially in
والهلالية
eastern
في المدن
Al-Gezira,
الثانية
Hilaliya,
تم
and
قصف
other
الرجال
villages.
والنساء ودي كانت
Men
ظاهرة جدا
and
ودي
women
واحدة من
are
الأنماط دائما يا إخواننا
separated,
بتكون
and
ظاهرة
this
والناس
is
الشغالين في
one
التوثيق
of
بتاع
the
العنف الجنسي والجرائم
visible
الحرب
patterns, especially known for those who
والشكل
are
بتاع
working on
الإبادة
documenting
الجماعية
sexual
اللي
violence,
بيتم
war
قصف
crimes,
النساء
and
والرجال
genocide.
دي
When
واحدة من
men and
المؤشرات
women
الكبيرة وده
are
ريد يعني
separated, this
حاجة
is
حمراء
likely to
هنا
be an
يكون في
indicator
كمية من
for to give
الاغتصابات
us a red line
حصلت
that
للنساء ودي واحدة الحاجة دي
a
ظاهرة برضو إنه
huge
إحنا المفروض
rapes
بنسترجع
is
الفيديوهات اللي
taking
طلعت في
place, and
السوشيال ميديا
this
لما انفصلوا
is
الرجال
very clear. We
في
need to
المسجد
recall
السيحة
the
كان
videos
في
we have
قصف
seen
الرجال
in
من
the
النساء
social
لأنه
media
النساء
when
في حالات
men were separated
انتهاكات
from women
كبيرة وسط
in
النساء
Sireha.
وبيحصل فيها
This
يعني أعداد كبيرة
was an
جدا
indicator that there was a huge
الحاجة الثانية
rape
تم
cases taking place
توثيقها من
at
الناس
the massive
في الأرض شركائنا
scale.
في
Another point that
الجزيرة
we have
إنه
documented on
بعدين
the
شنو
ground
قال
with
هو
our
بدأوا
partners in
يخشوا بيت
Al-Gezira,
بيت
after separating men, they
ومعظم
started
البيوت كانوا
getting
فيها نساء بعد ما تم
into
قصف
houses one
عدد
after
كبير
another.
من الرجال وإنه تم
House
فصلهم كانوا
these
يخشوا بيت
homes
بيت يعني
were
إنك أنت
houses
بحاجة
were full
مرتبة
of women
بتخش
after
البيت
killing the men,
بكمية من
so
النساء
they would
ودي
get
طوالي
into
بتربطني
the
أنا
house
بالإنه
and they
بالنمط
find
الثالث
huge
اللي هو دايما
number
نحن كان في
of
توثيقنا وفي
women, and
التحليل
this
بنلاقي إنه
takes me to
ظهر لنا
the
إنه
pattern
في
in
كمية من
our
الأسر بيكونوا
analysis
قاعدين
and
في بيت واحد
documentation. We have seen that
والأسر
a
دي دايما
number of
بيكونوا فيها
families
معظمها
are
نساء
together,
وبنات
mostly women
ومن
and
الإنسان
girls.
يعني الأسرة عندنا توثيق لأسرة ممكن
We
يكون فيها
have a
منها أكثر من
documentation
ثلاثة
of a
وعندهم طبيعة
family
الحالة والحالة
that
وكل الناس اللي قاعدين في
the
بيتهم
three,
بيصابوا
more than
ودي
three
دايما
women
لما
were
يخشوا
raped.
بيت
The
بيت
mother, the
دي
cousins,
واحدة من الأنماط
sisters.
برضو إنه يعني إحنا بنلقى في
This is
رفاعة في
another
المناطق الثانية
pattern.
والأزرق إنه بيكون اغتصبوا
In
كل العائلة
Rufaa,
تقريبا
in
في
Azraq,
لما
they
بيخشوا بيت وبيت
may
والطبيعة ذاتها بتاع البيت
rape the
اللي هو الغرة
whole
هي ذاتها يعني
village.
البيوت مفتوحة في
The
بعض
nature
والناس
of the
اتلمت كلهم جو في بيت
of
كبير
these
قعدوا مع
villages,
بعضهم
houses
فبتلقى
are
الاغتصابات دي وقعت هسه في
linked
الفترة
together. All
خلال
the families
التوثيق
come
لقينا احنا بنلقى
together
اكثر
and
من
stay in
اثنين
one
وثلاثة
place.
من الاسر
So
بالذات
our
تم
documentation
اغتصابهم
shows that there are
برضو ال ال ال
two or three
من تحليلنا او
women are raped
من
from a
توثيقنا
single
للفترة اللي فاتت
family.
نلقى
From
انه
our
في نمط هو
analysis and
بالنسبة لنا هو حاجة
documentation of
محسومة
the
انه في اغتصاب
past
للنسوان
experience, we will
يعني
find that
دي
there
اكثر
is
من
a
اكثر
new
من 10
pattern of
حالات
child rape. We
لطفلات تم
have
اغتصابهم
documented more than
قدام
10 cases
أهاليهم
of
مع أخواتهم
child
الكبار
girls
مع
who
أمهاتهم
were
ودي
raped
عندنا
in
أكثر
front of
من
their
10 حالات
relatives,
موثقة
with their mothers,
وذكر
with their
الأعمار ما بين 11
sisters. We
ل
have more
17
than
ودي
10
حصلت في القرى
documented cases ranging
ودي واحدة
from
من
11 to
الجهات اللي
17
عندنا لها
years.
توثيق
And this happened in
لها
different
توثيق
villages, and
توثيق
we have a
جيد
full
وتوثيق مهني
An excellent documentation and professional documentation. This documentation shows that case of a child of 8 years in Tambul who was raped in front of her relatives, father and mother, and her relative, and she died immediately after the rape. She was 13 years old. There was another case documented of a 13 years girl child who was gang raped in North Rufaa, and she was rescued and taken to Halfa, a long journey, a very long journey, and it took about more than 3-4 days, and this is well documented. Another pattern that we have, gang rape. You get a group of 5-6 rapists who would get into the families, separate the men, tie them, and set them. They also kill the civilians while they are defending their sisters and their relatives. There are similar cases when we documented this with the victims. It was reported that there were gang rapes for more than 3-4. There are widespread suicide cases, and it was seen by some on the social media. For us at SIHA, we have documented 6 rape cases after. It's more visible in the social media. We cannot say that there are only 6. There are cases of sisters, of girls who have committed suicide in different forms. The social media reports say that there are more than 13 rape cases who drowned themselves on the River Nile. We are verifying this information, which is time consuming, but apparently this is a pattern of suicide, especially in SIHA, Abu Jalfa, Sidera. There are about 13 suicide cases and 20 rape cases who were abducted after the rape. We are trying to verify this with our partners on the ground to verify this information. We at SIHA have documented more than 25 rape cases, including children and women and children, especially for us. What is happening? What has happened in Gezira East since 20th? It's not limited to East Gezira. It's spreading outside. The 50 villages are not on the Nile, on the Gezira East. It's not a revenge from East Gezira. It's a rather violation for the whole area. What has happened? This is an indicator that the violations and the horrific actions took place within a very short time, showing that it was a rainfall as they have did it at a very large scale for women and the civilians, and this shows that it was a pre-arranged and all that. There are many challenges that we have faced in SIHA, so that when we come to supporting the cases that have been evacuated, Saza Hala mentioned that more than 200 persons, mostly women, have been educated from dangerous areas with their families. One of the challenges that we are facing is to keep track of the cases. When we started the evacuation from Rufaa, they went to Banat, and when the RSF entered into Banat, Ramda, etc., they started moving to other areas, and this form another challenge we are facing. We have documented a rape case that was abducted from the street. She was raped and she was abandoned. And this has been reported in different parts, but this was worse than the previous one. It was they arranged themselves
افتكر
to do the
منشد
greatest
يعني في
level
إعادة
of
ممكن تختم.
violations
Sorry, Adla,
within the
can you
show time.
conclude?
Can you conclude, Adla?
اوكي. شكرا يا حالة. انا يعني ممكن انتظر الاسئله، لكن نحن يعني ممكن
We can wait
الدكتور
for the
سامي والناس الثانيين
questions,
المتحدثين والناس
but Dr.
المتحدثين
Sami and
المتطوعين
other
حقيقي
speakers,
الحالات ال 25 اللي تذكرت نحن
the
موظفين في العالم، نحن يعني بنحصل
the
فيه عدد
25
كبير جدا جدا.
cases that
الناس
we
لسه بالعافيه
documented,
يعني انه يخرجوا من
we
المناطق.
the number is
سامعيني انه
too
في
great, and
لسه
we are still
مدن
there are
كثيره
a lot of
محاصره،
suffering for
وبرضه
people
بالنسبه لنا مؤشر انه قاعد يحصل
to
شنو،
get
انه
evacuated.
النساء
There are
اول
indications
شيء
that there are
بيطلعوا
some
من
cities
القرى.
and villages
فده
still in the
برضه
siege,
بالنسبه
and
لنا
women are
ده
prevented from
بيقلقنا كثير
leaving
لما
the
نلقوا
village.
انهم
And this
محاصره
is
وفي مشاكل
really
خلوا المدنيين
concerning
والنساء
for us when
والفتيات
the
وعموما
villages
ده
are
بيكون له
under
تاثيرات
siege
برضه
and the
بالنسبه لنا في
civilians,
المنطقه.
especially women and girls, are
غير
not
انه
allowed. This
بنقلق
is
بسبب
very
الانتحارات
worrying
الكبيره اللي حصلت
indicator.
فيها،
Another source of
وبتخوف بينا
concern for
الحالات
us is the high rate
الحالات
of
المدنيين في الحال
suicide
هي
and
دي
the
جبل
fear
الجليد
that
وبيظهر دي الغيمه اللي فوق.
the
ففي حالات
the
كثيره
sexual
نحن
violence
بالتاكيد نحن ما بنقدر
and
نوصلها وما
suicide is
بنقدر
just like a
نوصلها.
tip of
لكن شكرا انا
iceberg.
بختم
We
هنا
have not
لو ممكن اي
identified
اسئله.
all cases,
Thank you
and
very
we
much.
will try our best. I'm
Thank you
going
very much,
to
Adla. I
stop
would
here,
like to
and I
repeat
can
that there is an
share with you later on.
interpretation services. All you need to do is to just press the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then go to the globe, and you will find interpretation and pick the language that you would
تشابه
like to
الكرة
interact and to listen to.
الأرضية تجدون كلمات الترجمة،
I would
وبعد ذلك
like to
تختارون اللغة التي
introduce
تفضلون استخدامها.
now
أود الآن أن
our
أقدم
colleague and friend of SIHA,
لكم
Mohammed Osman.
زميلنا
He is
وصديق لشبكة
Human
صيحة
Rights
محمد
Watch
عثمان، وهو
Sudan's researcher and someone who has been very
باحث
close
في
in
Human Rights Watch،
monitoring
مسؤول عن
the
السودان،
patterns of
شخص
atrocities that has been happening
مغرب
across the
ويتابع.
country. Mohammed, تفضل.
Thanks a lot, Hala, Adla, and colleagues, and it's
وهو
I mean, it's
يتابع
great.
في البلاد. شكرا جزيلا حالة
I'm
وزملائي.
unmuted.
I cannot hear you. Oh, okay. Yeah. Now I can hear you. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, no worries. Yeah, I mean, I was just saying that it's great to be here, even in these unfortunate circumstances. I mean, let me
كنت
start with
أتمنى أن أكون
reiterating
أشارك
something
في
that
حادث
happened
فظيع كهذا،
yesterday.
ولكن دعوني
We are here
بالبلد
talking
بأن
about the
أكرر ما
this is
ذكرته
really the tip
عادلة.
of the
نحن
iceberg.
إنه
We are
ما
not yet
نسمعه
really
ونتابعه
getting into
هو
the
مجرد قمة
individual
جبل
news and the
الجليد،
details
ونحن
of
لم
what's
نصل
really happening.
إلى
This is a moment that
تفاصيل
reminds me very much of other
الفظائع التي
places in
تحدث.
Sudan
هذه لحظة
or other places in Sudan.
تذكرني ما حدث في
The
الجنين
other
أو مناطق.
thing that what's been happening in Eastern Gezira, it's a continuation.
Mohammed, I don't want to interrupt, but kindly speak slowly for the sake of the interpretation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. What has been happening in Al-Gezira since the 20th of October is a continuation and accumulation of months of suffering in Al-Gezira inflicted by the rapid support forces. It's emboldened by decades of impunity, especially throughout the conflict, but particularly the global negligence. These atrocities, these tragedies, I've been talking to many, some of the survivors over the last days. These atrocities were avoidable if we had a proper, responsible global action to protect civilians in Sudan. The stories that I've been hearing, I mean, just one story of a family who were carrying their mother's, over 70-year-old was stopped at a checkpoint by the RSF, basically took everything, they even took her medication, which is not something the RSF would be able to use or sell. And they just took it. So this is just an example. We can always try to rationalize and try to find the objectives of certain attitudes by the abusive forces. But this is the modus operandi. This is the
القوى المنتهكة، ولكن هذه هي طريقة عملهم، وهذه هي بصمة.
Al-Geneina, but we saw that in other parts of the country at the same time. The stories that, and I think just the point around these stories really push us into what the global action, what the response we expect should look like. I mean, a key issue here is the absolute lack of safe passage and safe flight for civilians. Those even who had the resources to rent a bus or get into a truck, they will go into a journey, try to avoid checkpoints. Many of them died on the way. I was just talking to someone, an activist in the Gezira, whose niece in her early 20s died because she had diabetes and they couldn't get their medicines with them. People are rushed on trucks, hundreds of them, piling up onto each other, really struggling to even breathe on a journey that goes for days and days till they reach safety. This is just some of the stories we are hearing. We are talking about mass graves in the SIHA and other places, potentially at the same time. There are no safe passage that is happening. The RSF either force people to leave and extract money in the process, or prevent people from leaving, as we are hearing from Al-Hilaliya, to use them reportedly as human shields, and potentially as well for later stages, who knows what kind of atrocities we could be hearing from there. The dangerous thing that is happening on the background of everything is that the concept of who is a civilian in Sudan is completely eroded. If you are hearing and listening to the RSF talking points and videos, it's very clear they don't perceive anyone in these areas as civilians for whatever justification they're saying. Even if you're an armed person, there is a set of rules organize and regulate the behavior, especially if they surrender to you as you alleged to be them being fighters. And then you get people on the other side accusing people in Eastern Al-Gezira of being collaborators with the RSF and therefore are not worthy of the protection of the army or not worthy of people helping them at the same time. Hate speech is a real thing that we are seeing, what's happening in Al-Gezira, but also what's happening in other parts of the country. And I think this comes again to the point around civilian protection. I think that was last week when the UN Secretary General put his options paper, and I think many of us were very
الأمين العام
frustrated, very
للمتحدة ورقة
disappointed
القرار
by
وكنا
him not
محبطين
even
جدا.
entertaining the possibility of physical protection. We've been over a year in a conflict that every single evidence show that the army and the RSF will not be bothered by protecting civilians. That's period. The voices of the local activists, local frontline responders clearly established this issue. The global negligence about the protection of frontline responders. I mean, these are the only group in Al-Gezira and other parts of the country who are the crucial lifeline for millions of Sudanese who are left behind because of the aid access obstruction and the negligence of the humanitarians and the international community to increase the political pressure around humanitarian access. What is happening now, as unfortunate as it is, we would like to push again on the issue of physical civilian protection mission on the ground. This is a call many of the Sudanese groups have been asking. The last point here, I would like to also talk about the other angle around civilian protection, which is accountability. The fact we're seeing the RSF is doing what it's doing because there has been no accountability, no matter what, domestically or internationally. The UN fact-finding mission
الصعيد
made clear recommendations around the
المحلي أو
establishment
الدولي
of the
صدرت
International
توصيات
Criminal Law
واضحة
jurisdiction, the
من
establishment of a
البعثة
special chamber
تغص
focusing
الحقائق
on
تدعو
prosecuting and
لإنشاء
trying
محكمة
violations
خاصة
throughout the
تعنى
conflict. We
بمحاكمة
believe these are very important
الانتهاكات
recommendations
التي
to
تحدث
engage with.
في النزاع،
We don't
ونعتقد
have,
بأن
me
هذه
myself, have
التوصيات
a clear
مهمة جدا
jurisdiction
لنضع موضع
to really monitor the
الاعتبار.
situation on the
ونحن
ground. We are struggling with access to
لدينا
information.
مجموعات
We are hearing how
تقوم
RSF
بمتابعة الأوضاع على الأرض، ونحن نحاول أن
we are hearing about reports
إننا
from the ground
نستمع إلى
about example
تقارير
persons
حول من
confiscating
الأرض
Starlink
حول
devices and mobile phones.
الطريقة
So many of
التي
these
صادرت
stories
بها
are
قوات الدعم
coming
السريع
from
بأجهزة
the point of us asking for civilian protection and
ستارلينك
deployment
والهواتف.
on the
لهذا
ground
لن تظهر
is
هذه
also
القصص،
to help
وإن
on
سوى الذي يجعلنا
monitoring of
ندفع
abuses, to have proper
بالمطالبة
reporting
بحماية
and
المدنيين
verification.
على الأرض
The
للمساعدة في
stories
مراقبة
we're
الانتهاكات
hearing so
والمساعدة
far
في رفع
will be
التقارير
often in vain We should not
التحقيق إن
allow youth
القصص التي
to be
نستمع إليها يجب أن لا تضيع
locked behind the
في
fog of war.
خضم
And
هذه
I think we
الأحداث،
do
ولا نسمح
appreciate
لأن
you coming forward with
الانتهاكات أن تختفي
information
الانتهاكات
and
ووسائل الحرب،
brainstorming about
وإننا
what things could happen
نثمن
in
الأشخاص
this dire
الذين
situation.
يأتون
Thank you.
بالمعلومات
Thank you
حول
very
ما
much,
يحدث في
Mohammed
هذه
Osman.
الأوضاع السيئة. شكرا
Do you have any
جزيلا.
challenges with interpretation?
محمد.
I see your hand up. Okay, yeah, great. Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, so right now I'm going to invite Dr. Sami Mahmoud.
طلب من الآن من دكتور سامي محمود.
Dr. Sami is, a partner of SIHA. He is one of our most critical
شركاء في الصيحة، واحد من أهم الأشخاص الذين يساعدوننا في تنسيق الجهود لتقديم الدعم للناجيات العنف الجنسي على الأرض، وهو رئيس الجمعية الأفريقية لأطباء الاختصاصيي النساء والتوليد، وهو رئيس الجمعية السودانية لاختصاصي النساء والتوليد، والذي وساعدنا في شراكتنا مع الجمعية السودانية لاختصاصي النساء والتوليد. سوف يتحدث عن الخدمات الصحية الطبية المقدمة لهؤلاء الضحايا في هذا الوقت المريع. طبعا اسمي سامي محمود، وأنا استشاري الطب النسائي، وكنت الأمين العام للجمعية السودانية لاختصاصي النساء والتوليد، وأنا حاليا الرئيس المنتخب للاتحاد الأفريقي للجمعية الأفريقية لاختصاصي النساء والتوليد. ولسوء الحظ فإن هذه الحرب قد حدثت على أجساد النساء والفتيات طوال 18 شهرا منصرمتين، ولكن في الأسبوعين الأخيرين رأينا تصاعدا في العنف الجنسي بشكل عام في ولاية الجزيرة، تحديدا في قرى شرق الجزيرة. أكثر من 100 قرية شهدت تصاعدا، ووردت تقارير عديدة حول اغتصاب للعديد من النساء والفتيات والأطفال. والأمر المزعج هو أن هنالك تفشي تزايد للعنف الجنسي ضد الطفلات، إضافة إلى تقرير صحيحة فإننا قد صدر تقرير من الاتحاد السوداني للأطباء السودانيين لأكثر من 47 حالة تم تأكيدها ونشرها في الإعلام. المشكلة شرق الجزيرة وعدد من المناطق التي تحدث في السودان أن هنالك آثار كبيرة تقع على النساء بسبب عدم قدرتهن على الحصول على خدمات
There is no services for doing cesarean sections. There is no services for family planning. There is no services for post-abortion care. And even we are suffering to provide services for clinical management of rape. And here I would like to thank SIHA for helping doctors, for helping obstetricians and all medical cadres to provide the reasonable service of clinical management of rape that is happening right now in safe areas like in Halfa, like in Shandi, like in Al-Gadarif, and in Kasala, where people get refuge escaping the RSF forces. So there is significant need for specialized services in Sudan
ماسة للخدمات المتخصصة في السودان علشان التحديد في مناطق النزاع هذه. كما ذكرت فإننا نحتاج إلى مساعدة في إجراءات تنظيم الأسرة في رعاية ما بعد الإنجاب وفي المتابعة السرية. إننا نعاني كثيرا، وحتى والضغوط الدعم السريع تستهدف المقدمي الرعاية الصحية، وهنالك حالة اختصاصيين نساء توليد
now
تم
after 18 months
اختطافهم وقتلهم من قبل قوات الدعم السريع.
brutal
والآن
war
وبعد
we have
18
millions
عاما
of
من
children,
اندلاع هذه
orphans
الحرب
and helpless
الوحشية، فإننا
and this is
نواجه
a very
أطفال
strange situation now which we
أنجبوا
are
نتيجة
facing in
الاغتصاب،
Kassala,
وهذا وضع
Shandi
غريب
and
نواجهه
Dongla.
الآن في كسلة
And
وفي شندي
some
وفي
of these
دونغلا.
survivors
وتعلمون
has
أن
flees the
بعض من
country to
هؤلاء
the neighboring country. We have
الناجيات
now
قد هربوا
survivors
من
in Sudan,
البلاد إلى الدول
survivors in
المجاورة،
Eritrea, we
ولدينا
have
ناجيات
survivors
في
in
تشاد
Egypt,
وإريتريا
and we
وفي
have
مصر.
real survivors now in UAE.
وهنالك
So Sudanese women and children
ناجيات
flees to
في
the home
الإمارات
while seeking for jobs, seeking for health,
هربوا
seeking for many things.
باحثات عن
And we are
المساعدة
experts. Many children
يد العون،
out of this
ولقد
cry
ساعدنا
state who are Sudanese,
في
and there is
إنجاب عدد من
brutal amount
الأطفال
of
الذين
food
نتجوا
where
بسبب
we
هذه
can find families to adopt them.
الأزمة.
Or at the end
وهنالك
of the day,
مشكلة
they
كيف
are
نجد
enemy.
لهم
So this
أسر
war,
تقوم
in fact,
برعايتهم
has a
فهم في
lot of
الأمر
impact
السوداني.
on
إن
women
هذه
and
الحرب
children, and we are
لديها
very,
آثار
very,
كثيرة
we
على
are very
النساء والأطفال،
worried about the outcome,
وإننا
and we
قلقون
would like to
جدا
have established a lot of
بنتائجها،
clinics
ونود
for this
أن ننشئ
one-stop
عدد من
treatment centers for women and
المعيادات
children, and
بالمراكز
we are
التي تقدم
calling the
كل الخدمات
international community
للنساء
to help us
والأطفال.
in this
ونناشد المجتمع
necessary,
الدولي
because many
للمساعدتنا في
governments
هذه
and
القضايا، لأن
NGOs
الحكومة
alone could not achieve all
السودانية أو
with
المنظمات غير الحكومية
the
السودانية لا
problem.
تستطيع
I
أن
stop
تحقق
here, Hala, and thank you
كل
very
ما هو
much
متوقع
for letting
منها
me talk
لأنفسهم
on this
يتوقفون. هلا
important issue.
وشكرا جزيلا على
Thank you
إتاحة
very
هذه
much for
الفرصة للحديث
political
في
input,
هذا
Dr.
الموضوع
Sami. Thank you
المهم.
for highlighting the fact that until now we don't have specialized
شكرا
clinics
جزيلا دكتور
dealing
سامي،
with
وشكرا
survivors
على
of sexual
إلغاء
violence.
الضوء على
We have
عدم توفر
one-stop center
معيادات
for survivors of sexual
متخصصة
violence.
لتوفير الرعاية
Service,
للناجيات،
but
ولا
also
يوجد عدم وجود مراكز
inexpensive
تقدم
services.
خدمات
We
شاملة،
struggle
وعلى الرغم من
to
أنها
have
ليست بالخدمات
access
المكلفة.
to sexual and
نحن
reproductive to sexual violence protocol or
هنالك
post-rape
صعب أن
protocol.
تواجه الراغبات في
Dr. Sami
الحصول
knows
على
that
الخدمات
healthcare services and midwives
وتنفيذ
sometimes have to remain
بروتوكول
anonymity
الاغتصاب. ودكتور
to prevent
سامي
the type of
يعلم
patient we
الإبداع
have to give antibiotics and so on.
الممرضات
Dr.
والقابلات
Sami also,
في توفير ما هو
worked
مطلب في ظل
on
ظروف
cases of
صعبة.
sexually
كذلك
transmitted
عمل مع
diseases.
الدكتور
We
سامي
have
في
testimonies from
في حالات
physician
الأمراض المنقولة
background
عن
which
طريق
talks about
الجنس،
the
ولدينا
sake of
إفادات من
survivors
الطباع
of
على
sexual violence
الأرض الذين تحدثوا
exposed to
أن
STDs
50%
or plight
من
of STDs,
الناجيات
including
من
syphilis.
العنف
It's such a
الجنسي قد
shame
تعرضنا إلى
that
مختلف أنواع الأمراض الجنسية، وفي ذلك الزهري.
services are
إنه
not
أمر مخجل
provided
أن هذه
fully. And
الخدمات
I just would like
لا
to
غير
stress
متاحة
here
وغير
that the
متوفرة
international
للنساء.
community are
وأود
not
أن أؤكد
spectators.
بأن
We are
المجتمع
objects. We are human
الدولي
beings
ليس
that
بالمشاهد.
we
نحن
share what we
لسنا
see.
بأشياء
We
تشاهد، نحن بشر.
respect
وعندما
each
نستعرض
other.
معكم
We
ما يحدث لدينا
respect
فإننا
different
نتوقع
actors
من
from
المجتمع
ethnicity,
الدولي
capabilities,
ومن مختلف
aspirations to
الجهات،
act
من
basically
خاصة
what
في
we are
المهجر،
talking
أن
about.
يقوموا
Thanks again, Dr. Sami, and now I
بالتصرف
will
اعتمادا على ما
invite
ذكرناه.
Ustad
الآن
Mohammed
أطلب
Fawzi.
من
Mohammed Fawzi
الأستاذ محمد
is from
فوزي،
Al-Hasahisa
وهو من
Resistance Committee,
الحصحيصة،
the
لجنة مقاومة
center
الحصحيصة،
where the violation has been happening
من
since
مركز
December
حدوث
and
هذه
until now.
الانتهاكات منذ
محمد تفضل.
ديسمبر
And
الماضي وحتى
محمد will
هذه
speak in Arabic.
اللحظة.
تفضل يا محمد.
محمد سوف يتحدث باللغة العربية.
السلام عليكم. شاكرين لكل الحضور. مساء الخير. سامعني كويس؟ تحية لكم للمرة الثانية. نحن لما نيجي
Greetings
نتكلم
once
عن
again. When
المشاكل
we
اللي قاعدة
speak
تصير في
about
الجزيرة
the
واللي هي أسباب
problems
المشاكل اللي قاعدة تستضاف بسبب
facing
الحرب اللي قاعدة
people
بنقول
in
يا أخي إن الحرب
Jazeera, which
وضع
is
كافة الطرق.
part of the problem.
الحاجة
When
دي
we say
قاعدة
that
تعني بإنه يا أخي
this war is
الميليشيا بتاعت الدعم السريع
too
دي قاعد
serious,
تخط قرارات
it
السلام
means that
السنة
the
في الفترة
RSF
القصيرة دي
militias is
التصدي
taking the resolution of the UN Security Council resolution of 1820 for responding to sexual violence, 1888, 1889, 1960 for the prevention of sexual violence. We find that the RSF is using sexual violence as a tool of war. And this is very evident and reflected in the number of cases that are increasing on daily basis. And the reason for that, besides being used as a tool against the people of Jazeera, they are facing very serious problems, and the escalation of violence is because of militarism. When we are speaking about the numbers right now, from 20th October up to now, the last figures that we have obtained from the statisticians, it has been reported that there are 48 rape cases and sexual violence, and the other unreported cases, because to logistical problems, it could be more than 200 cases.
بنتكلم في انه يا اخي في الجزيره تحديدا طبعا الاجتماع
In
بتاعها
Gezira,
ممكن
in
تكون حالات
particular,
بالالاف بتاعت الاغتصاب، لكن المجتمع بتاع
the
الجزيره ده
society does not
مجتمع
allow.
متين
It may reach thousands.
فيما يخص
The
القضايا
the society, the
بتاعت
community
الضرر
is very
وبتاعت
much
التحديد،
reserved,
يعني
especially when it
ما
comes
دام
to
انه
women and
يكون
rape
في جهد
issues. So unless
بصوره
an effort is
بصوره طويله
exerted
وبنفس طويل ما بنقدر
over
إننا
long
نحصل
period
على
of
حالات بتاعت
time, you
الاغتصاب
would not be able
الكامله
to
في المنطقه
identify
الجزيريه،
the
وبنلقى في هجمات
all
هي ما
rape
زالت
cases in
مستمره
Gezira
للقرى
state.
والفرقان والكمان
Attacks
في
are
ولايه الجزيره حتى
still
الوقت دي،
going
ودي بتاكد
in
في انه يا اخي الحالات بتاعت الجريمه
Gezira
باستمرار حتكون
villages
مستمره، ما لم تتوقف
and
الهجمات بتاعت الميليشيا دي عن
IDP
المناطق
camps.
بتاعت
This
الجزيره.
shows that their
وبنلقى انه
attacks
من
will
20
continue,
لحد الليله
and
في نزوح
from
باكثر
20th
من
up to
225 فردان
October up to now,
دي
there
في شبه
are
الجزيره كامله
more than
في شرق الجزيره، بالاضافه
225 villages
لشمال الجزيره
have
المنطقه
been
بتاعت
forcibly
الكاملين،
displaced in
بالاضافه
East
لغرب اول ياسين
Al-Jazeera, in addition to Kamlin, in
المناطق الحلاوي.
Jazeera West, and 2 or
بنلقى انه
3
بنلقى ثاني
villages in
برضه انه عدد الشهداء هم صاغوا اكثر من 1300
the
شهيد،
martyrs, or
عدد
those
المصابين هم حديث
killed is
الالاف،
more than
الاف
1300.
المصابين،
The
وفي
injured
اقل من 1000
are
اصابات فقط.
thousands. Some of them are fatal.
ده جانب. الجانب الثاني اللي قاعد بنتكلم
This
فيه
is one
انه يا اخي
aspect.
المنطقه بتاعت الجزيره
The
عموما
second,
هي ماشيه لمجاعه
that
حقيقيه، ماشيه لمجاعه
the
حقيقيه، لانه
Jazeera
رفاعه
is
وتنبول
approaching
كانت مركز
real famine.
اغتصاب قيل بتاعت
Rufaa and
الميليشيا على ولايه
Tambul have
الجزيره،
been
دي كانت
an
مركز
economic
اغتصاب،
hubs
بتمشي
throughout
الاسلحه
the
والحاجات
RSF
المعروفيه
control
بما
of
فيها الادويه اللي
Jazeera
بيها الميليشيا في
for the
الجزيره،
provision
بيتم بيعها
of
في
the basic
التنبول والرفاعه.
commodities
حاليا
and
في
medication.
او حتكون مش
Currently,
شبه مجاعه، حيكون المؤكد ان في
it's
مجاعه،
not semi
وفي انباء بتتكلم عن
famine.
انه
No,
جزء
it's
كبير من القرى في
assured
البدايه
and confirmed
حتواجه نزوح
famine.
كامل بسبب شح
In
الموارد
many parts of the
بتاعت الأكل
state will
والشراب
have to
والسلع الأساسية،
to
بالإضافة
move out because of
للعلاج
the
برضه ما
scarcity
متوفر.
of
بنلقى إنه
food,
برضه
basic
كرقم زائد،
services,
بنلقى إنه أكثر من
and,
مليون
and
و500
commodities.
مواطن من
More
20
than
أكتوبر لحد تاريخ اللحظة
1,500,000
اللي نزحوا من الجزيرة،
persons
يا
have
نزوح
been
داخلي يا
displaced
فاتوا نزوح
from
خارجي ذات الجزيرة.
20th October
ده
up to
الرقم
now, either
المؤكد من مع الناس اللي
internally
عندهم
within
السلطة.
Gezira
ومن
State
بداية
or
كل
outside.
الدعم السريع لولاية الجزيرة،
This is
حالة النزوح اللي حصلت في ولاية
since
الجزيرة
the
أكثر من
entry
3
of the
مليون.
RSF militia's entry
إما نزحوا من
into
سكاني أو نزوح
Gezira State, the displacement
الجزء
have
الجزء
affected
الثاني
more than
للمسألة
3,000
الأساسية
villages,
والحيوية
either
ومهمة
wholly or
المفروض نحن
partially.
نتناقش فيها
Going to
أثناء
another
حفل
important,
المقاومة والأطفال
central,
اللي
and
هي
crucial
النظرة
issue
بتاعت
that should be discussed
استمرار
by the
العمل
resistance committees and
في
emergency
القضايا
rooms on
والدعم
the
للمراكز الصحية
RSF's
لأنه
on continuing the
المواطنين
support
يكون حيستفيدوا
for
من
the
الحاجات دي
public kitchens,
بصورة أساسية وصورة عاجلة بحكم
the
الأزمة القاعدة في الولايات دي.
serving
زي ما قلت قبل
the
الأرقام اللي بتتكلم إنه
citizens
حيكون في مجاعة
as a
مؤكدة
result
في
of the
الجزيرة
ongoing
بسبب الحاجات
crisis. As I said,
الموجودة، إضافة
there is
لأنه
an imminent
مشروع
famine
الجزيرة
taking place
منطقة
in
بتاعت
Jazeera
الحصاد ده
because
ومن
of the
الحاجات
reasons
الحقيقية،
that
بالإضافة
in addition to
لمنطقتين
that,
برضه من الحاجات
SIHA
التابعة لمشروع الجزيرة في الشرق. هم
state
حاليا
in
أكثر من
فضل
9
الحداث.
أقسام أو 10 أقسام تابعة لمشروع الجزيرة، فيها
These
مليون
are more
و200 ألف
than
فدان. دي خارج
centers.
الزراعة، خارج الزراعة تماما.
They are
كل مزروع في
outside
المنطقة بتاعت
the
الميليشيا وما فارق فيه فوق
production
50,000 فدان.
areas and their harvest.
فبنتكلم عن أرقام قاعدة، بنتكلم عن يا أخي
The RSF is
المجاعة دي
controlling the.
أصبحت على الأبواب. بعد ذلك بنبقى في إنه نشوف
We are
كل
saying
ده
that
كمجتمع
the
مدني لمقاومة
famine
منظمات
is approaching.
الأمم
We need to
المتحدة
think
والعالم،
as a civil
متفقين
society,
إنه يا أخي كيف
as
نقدر نوفر
NGOs, on how we can deliver,
يتم إيقاف الحرب، نوفر
how we can
الخدمات
stop the
الأساسية
war,
والحاجات
how we
للناس
can
الواعيين
provide the
بالمخاطر
basic
بتاعت النزاح هناك،
needs for those who
ونقدر
are
نخلي الحياة
affected
بتاعتهم
by
ما
the
بنقول
conflict
مستقرة
and
لسبب
how
الوضع
to
القاعد، لكن
make their life not necessarily stable, but to
صحية
allow them to
في حالة
continue
اللاحق
life.
في الجزيرة.
Now there
أنا
is,
شاكر
we are in a state of now.
ومقدر
I'm very grateful
و...
for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mohammed Fawzi. And thank you for highlighting very critical points, the issue of starvations that's currently becoming a reality. And thank you also for highlighting the issue of massive displacement and the density of the population of Gezira State. And the fact that despite the presence of the RSF and the violence, communities tried as much as they can to cope, and now it became literally impossible. I'm going to invite witness one. She's going to share her testimony on the situation when it comes to women and girls in Gezira. Witness one, please unmute yourself, and she's going to speak in Arabic.
مساء الخير عليكم. أتمنى إنكم تكونوا سامعيني كويس.
There is an echo, so if someone next to you, can you just turn off your volume, please? Go ahead, witness one. Yeah.
Okay. أنا حامشي في الجانب بتاع التحديات اللي هي قاعد تواجه النساء والفتيات
to the challenges facing women and girls in general in the RSF controlled areas. And this is part of the challenges facing the citizens in RSF controlled areas from the early moments for their entry. The violence and increasing levels of sexual violence. There are many challenges facing documentation of the women's rights. When they are moving outside, they were moving. When the RSF enters into an area, they confiscate all the vehicles and not allowing, and the roads are not safe. And as the RSF is controlling all villages from East Gezira up to Fao, and leading to an increasing levels of violations against and attacks against the civilians, people takes the animal-driven cars, and they are even controlled as a result. they have to move on walking, and this is a very long distance, as the family may have women, men, elderly, and kids cannot move and walk all of this area. In addition, there was another route used by the people at SIHA, which has been cut off, and no one is allowed to use that one because it's under the control of the RSF. There is a single road used by the civilians, but very risky. People go through the east to Omdurman, to East Nile, and then to Shandi. This is one of the challenges facing people in exiting Gezira East to other areas. In addition, there is another problem of cash. There are no sources of income. There is a high level of greed for the lorries or buses owners. They are asking for very high fees. They are confiscating the star links. They cannot communicate with their people. The RSF confiscates all the star links devices to isolate the area from the outside world. Another challenge facing us is that in addition to the sexual violence patterns, all of them have taken place in East Gezira East, and within a very short period of time by the RSF. Within very short days, the numbers could be higher than that. These are the numbers confirmed so far. We believe that they are higher. I believe that there is a lack of the proper documentation is because of the social stigma, which prevents the proper documentation of sexual violence and in the provision of services to survivors of sexual violence, and they are denied of their right to mental health and psychological support, which affects their life in the long term or in the short term, in their physical or psychological stability, and a threat to families on how to respond. Most of the families reject the claims of rape cases or different forms. The social stigma is evident even at the level of the media. The media makes reference to mass killing, to attacks, looting, etc., but they don't mention sexual violence, as people do not make reference to these. There are multiple. This is part of the challenges facing us in the documentation and facing people when they are attempting to leave Al-Gezira to safer areas. Thanks.
I have to move to English. Thank you for the witness, for her valuable input, highlighting the issue of safe passages, and also highlighting the fact that, you know, sexual violence is not an issue that's been discussed or talked about as, you know, as we really hope it would be, you know, and that makes really the life of the victims and survivors very, very difficult. I'm going to give a last opportunity to our colleague Hussein Harran. Hussein, he is from Al Junaina, and Hussein, he is a witness to the atrocities that has taken place in West Darfur and Al Junaina particularly. And I'd like him to very quickly shed lights on the similarities between and the patterns between what's happening in Al-Gezira and what has been happening in West Darfur in Al-Junaynah. Hussein.
شكرا أستاذ حالة وشكرا لصيحة والحضور
شكرا عادلة والصيحة والحضور على
زي أستاذ حالة قالت إنه
thanks عادلة صيحة and for this opportunity. I can share with you very quickly some similarities. In fact, when you look at the violations that are taking place in Al-Gezira, they are the same copy of what happened in Al-Junaynah. Allow me to take you back to early days, and I believe that most of you have witnessed the recording of Mus'ab asking about her son. This would brought memories of the same that happened in Al-Junaynah when people were trying to cross streams and small streams and small. This was an is my voice
But we can
breaking? Yes.
ده نفس الحاجة اللي حصلت هنا. الحاجة الثانية برضو القصة دي بتذكرني إنه
Hussein, can you slow down بالراحة؟
الصوت ما واضح وأنا بواجه صعوبة. زين.
Now you can try to talk. ممكن تتكلم يا حسين. You can talk now.
كده سامعني مش كده أحسن. ده نفس
This is the same.
نفس لما نتكلم عن انه رحلتهم مثلا او طريقه النزوح كانت كيف، ده بيذكرني
When we
كيف
look at the route, the flight route, this reminds me of 30 kilos and subjected to rape. The story of Mus'ab.
ماشي في الشارع لقى اولاده الاثنين متوفيين. انا افتكر انه او مقتولين هو.
And she found her sons killed, both murdered. The same scenario, the same.
الحاجات اللي حصلت. لما عادة بيتكلم برضه عن الاغتصابات الجماعية وفصل النساء
When Adla was speaking about the mass rape and separating men from women, this is the same happened in Al-Junaynah. They separated men from women and they committed sexual violence and rape. And in Al-Zahra dormitories, when they committed, I don't think they are going to stop here. Targeting of women and children and using them as a tool of war. This has been happening in Darfur throughout the history. I believe that the militia is just changing its name. Janjaweed, Border Guards, RSF, they just change their name, but their tools are the same. We need to ask ourselves why they do that. It's because of lack of accountability. They believe that there is no one who can hold them accountable. Therefore, they commit these violations. They document their own crimes. And this provocation, the whole world, the internal, the local, the regional, and the international, that we can do whatever we do. So their commander told them not to take photos, not to video. This is a clear message. Carry on, but don't document. What I'm saying, that this war is inclusive for all the Sudanese, and all of the Sudanese are suffering. The question is how to find radical solution for sexual violence and using women's bodies as part or as a weapon of war. In order to do this, as Mohammed Osman and Hala said, we need to look into the accountability. We are not talking about figures, but real stories. It should be used to end the accountability and to bring the war taking place into end. We need to focus on this. Also on the mass graves. I believe that the photos shows that the mass grave in SIHA, in Wadnura, in Tambul, the same thing has happened in Darfur from 2003 and still going on. I believe that the stories, the rape, child rape, and mass rape have been used in West Darfur, in Jenin, in Darfur, and it's been just been repeated.
Thank you very much.
I may stop here. Thanks indeed.
Sorry, I have to switch to English. Sorry, we have a lot of questions in that we have received in the chat. Mohammed Osman, I hope you are still around. If he is not around, I don't see Mohammed Osman is still around. There are questions about recommendation and it came from Titania. I don't know if Titania is still around, but basically, from the UN Women, and she is asking in New York, she's asking about the most critical recommendations. We have been speaking for a very long time about civilian protections. If we really want to have a functioning humanitarian aid, that's something that, as SIHA we have been talking about. Having said that, there are areas and territories right now where the displaced from Al-Gezira State are moving to. They are extensively moving to Eastern Sudan, and they are moving to Northern Sudan. The closest point to them is the area of Khashm al-Girba and Halfa al-Jadida. Those communities are already impoverished communities and quite overwhelmed with large number of IDPs. The atrocities has been happening since October 21st. We anticipate by now that we have, we should have access to humanitarian aid in these particular locations. Unfortunately, right now, there is a massive gap when it comes to receptions, humanitarian aid, and support for the displaced communities. Until now, Sudan does not have a standard displaced camps or shelters for the 12 million IDPs from across the country. There is no serious negotiations, for safe passages for civilians outside of conflict zones and outside of the atrocities. Women are delivering children and they have severe bleeding on the road. Many die in their way fleeing and exposed to all kinds of violation. So the fact that, there is no clear strategy by the international community towards the exacerbating crisis and the nightmare that is happening in Sudan. This is one of the worst crises in the world, yet it's the least, when it comes to receiving aid and humanitarian support, which is quite a shame. As I said, the international community are not spectators. they have a responsibility towards Sudanese people when it comes to actionable protections of civilians, when it comes to provisions of humanitarian aids, when it comes to provisions of sexual and reproductive health. And right now, there are more people that has been forced out of their villages, out of their homes, while Al-Gezira is turning into a militarized space. This is the area that used to be the breadbasket of Sudan. So right now it's going to be a militarized zone. So it's a very, very gruesome and bleak picture, especially with the lack of strategies towards civilian protections, safe passages, negotiating, for civilians who were held hostage under very difficult circumstances in a number of villages, by the way, against money. So it's, it's really, there is a lot that can be done, but yet there is no vision or strategy in terms of how it can be done, and it's not being discussed or addressed as it should be. I'm afraid that we are running out of time.
كما يفترض. أعتقد أخشى أن الوقت قد انقضى وتلغينا عدد من الأسئلة على الدردشة وكل من شارك
and answering the questions that you have shared with us. We really thank you for your engagements, for your participation, for your willingness to hear us. And, we hope that we will be able, to have an update again on this situation soon. Thank you very much. Yeah. Bye-bye. Please don't forget to leave your emails if you would like us to follow up with you. Fantastic. Thank you for your leaving emails. Yeah. We will share an update immediately after the press conference. And you can always, direct your questions to any one of us. Thanks a lot, guys. Shukran lekum. Shukran. Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye. I think we were done here. Thanks a lot. We were left with SIHA, or there are some people who are putting their contact informations and emails. I think I will wait still. Thank you very much, Andre. Okay. I think more or less everyone has put their emails and contact informations. So I'm going to close this meeting. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. Absolutely, Obaima. Thank you. Okay.